So we'll just wait a few minutes as everybody starts rolling in. We're going to give it maybe about 30 seconds. We want to make sure everybody's here to hear our introduction. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to P&P Live. My name is Heidi, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator at Politics and Prose, and I have the pleasure of hosting our event this afternoon. Thank you for joining us and tuning into this format, where we continue to bring authors and new books to you. I am pleased to welcome our guests this afternoon, Cynthia Kadohata and Caitlyn Dlouhy. You can buy your copy of Cynthia's new book, Saucy, by clicking on the link in the chat box. You'll see on the side there. If you have a question for our guests, you can click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. At the end of the chat, they will have time to answer some of your questions. You can also vote on questions you like and want most answered. Now onto the event you're waiting for. Since publishing her first novel, The Floating World, in 1989, Cynthia Kadohata has been viewed as one of the most compelling novelists in the United States. Her first middle grade novel, Kira Kira, won the Newbery Award in 2005, and her novel, The Thing About Luck, won the Asian Pacific American Award for Literature in 2013. Cynthia has traveled extensively and currently lives in California with her dogs, and hockey-playing son. In conversation with Cynthia this afternoon is Caitlyn Dlouhy. Caitlyn is the Vice President and Editorial Director of Caitlyn Dlouhy Books. She is drawn most towards publishing voices unusual and unexpected, from middle grade and teen fiction to picture books, as well as graphic novels, nonfiction, and poetry. Her books have received numerous prestigious literary awards. And now I turn the event over to them.
Hello, Cynthia.
Hi, Caitlyn.
I want to thank Politics and Prose for giving us this chance to see each other. We worked together on novels we have for years and years, but because of the pandemic, we haven't seen each other at any of the conferences we normally would. So thank you so much for this opportunity. So Cynthia, this new book of yours, Saucy, the minute you sent me in this manuscript, I was utterly smitten. Saucy, for those of you who aren't familiar with it yet, which would be a little hard to be familiar with because it's just come out, is about this girl named Becca who feels as a quadruplet that she is the only one of the four who doesn't have anything special about them. One of her brothers is a very fabulous hockey player. The other composes music. The other's just sort of one of these genius kids who thinks thoughts that no one else thinks. And Becca feels incredibly ordinary. However, one night when they're out for a walk, the entire family's out for a walk, she hears something in a bush and she goes to look and see what it is. And it's this sickly baby pig, a little piglet. And of course her heart cracks open and she wants to save this pig. And like kids will do, she begs and begs and begs. And her parents say, well, let's at least bring it to the vet to see if it can be saved. Of course, the vet is able to help. And of course, Becca then falls in love with this pig, and the parents say, you can bring it home for just a little while. You know, with kids, just a little while turns into a big, big while. What the parents and Becca don't realize is that this is the type of baby little pig that's going to turn into a 300 or 400-pound pig, and it's going to wreak havoc throughout the house, throughout the yard, and a decision will have to be made. There are other layers to this story about a betrayal of a friendship. It goes on, but that's the general setup of Cynthia's novel. So Cynthia, the first thing I want to know is, you love your critters. You love your critters, from Cracker, the dog in Cracker, to A Million Shades of Grey with an elephant, to Checked, which had a Doberman. How did you land on a piglet for this novel?
Okay, so, and by the way, I hear some chaos in the background with my rescue Doberman, who may burst into the room at any moment barking. So I just wanted to let you all know that. Anyway, my son does play hockey, and he had a teammate who had this pig. It wasn't really the teammate's pig. So the teammate, his name was Ryan, and he did not like the pig at all. Her name was Scarlett. And I guess she ate his Xbox controller or something, or destroyed it. And she pooped on his floor, because pigs are really smart. So they will actually, they are capable of doing something like specifically pooping on your floor if they're annoyed at you. And so the pig really belonged to his little sister, who was madly in love with it. And so my son slept over there once, and he said he woke up and the pig was kind of leaning over him like this, snorting. And then he said that was scary, but overall it was a very chill pig. And so I found out from the mom that she said she loved the pig as well, and she would just look into the pig's face sometimes and think, "This is the actual cutest thing I have ever seen in my life." And it was very, very smart. And the her mother and father-in-law, I shouldn't be even saying this, didn't know that they had a pig. And so whenever they came over, they would hide the pig in the background. And I went to a party at their house once, and the pig was just wandering around like a dog or a cat might. I tried petting it. It had very, very coarse, crispy hair, and it had no interest in me. Like, it loved certain people. It had no interest in me, but it was very, there was just something so unusual and unique about it. And I started just looking at pigs and how incredibly intelligent they are. And, just things like they're capable of playing really basic kind of games that dogs are not. They can look in the mirror more readily than a dog and understand that they're seeing their reflection and things like that. And I just, I love animals. I really love them. I think they change your lives in amazing ways. And so I just wanted to write about a pig. I just, I met this pig, and even though it was very snobby towards me personally, I could see that there was something incredibly special about it.
Now I want to pig even more, and I thought I did after working on this book with you. So the book Saucy is full of hope and redemption and a wildly naughty pig, whose name of course is Saucy. The creation of this particular character is singular and unique and unlike any other character you've written before by far. What kind of research did you do to really capture the qualities that make Saucy so unique, yet also feel very true to the species? And I would imagine you had a blast doing so.
I did. I talked to some animal rescue people. So I talked to somebody from a working farm, and I also talked to a couple of animal rescue people. And I interviewed a lot of people who either owned or worked with pigs, because the pigs that people have for pets, they're much smaller than farm pigs like Saucy, but I'm told that they have these similar levels of intelligence and personality. So I interviewed all these people, and I read, someone the other day said that I put all these human characters into the pig, and I actually didn't do that at all. So everything in the book is stuff that people who know pigs very well tell me that they've seen pigs do. So for instance, there was in the book, Saucy goes, when she's being judgmental. And someone told me that her pig goes, when it's judging you or something. And someone else told me that her pig goes, ha, 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 when it's kind of laughing. And then someone else, I did not use this one in the book, but someone told me that when her pig means no, her pig goes, no. So I didn't make this stuff up. It's all stuff that pig people have actually told me that they've seen pigs do. And yeah, it was really surprising, because, there's a lot of pigs in kids' books, but I didn't really know anything about real life pigs until I started talking to all these people, and just about how incredibly close and sometimes intense their relationships are with their pigs.
The other unusual part of this novel, of many unusual parts, is the fact that Becca is one of a quadruplet. And having 4 kids in a story is hard to juggle to begin with, to give each one their own personality, their own, especially with siblings, their own thing they're trying to work through. And yet, to my mind, you're masterful at doing that here, where each kid has his own thing, each kid is trying to have their own identity, and yet they're quadruplets, and so they feel the need to stay very close at the same time, which makes it that much harder for Becca, who feels like an outsider, even though her brothers never deliberately make her feel that way. She's internalized her feeling inferior because she doesn't have that special thing. How did that the idea of quadruplets come in, because that's taking on a lot for a number of kids in one book who are siblings.
So there was a teacher in Ohio. The book takes place in Ohio, and there was a teacher in Ohio who, I think she had 3 or 4 English classes, and they read Half a World Away, and they all wrote me notes, and then I wrote them back. And one of them mentioned that she was a quadruplet. And now that I think of it, actually, there's probably her 3 brothers who also wrote me notes, since they're all in the same grade. But she was the only one who mentioned that she was a quadruplet. And so I actually asked if I could interview her and her family, and I Skyped with them, and they were incredibly delightful, and they just were filled with love. And I would almost say there was something magical about it. Like the dad was talking about how, he and his wife had thought they could not have kids. And then, a short time later, they're in a room with 4 quadruplets, and it's complete chaos in their house. But he said it was just an incredibly magical time in their lives. And, and I've known people, especially in the hockey world, where, when it takes up so much time to play hockey, and there's so much focus of the parents on the hockey. And I've seen siblings who kind of feel like, well, what about me, or what is there for me? And so I kind of understand that dynamic a little. And I just wanted to capture that in Becca.
And you added on to Becca. Poor Becca, but Becca's fine in the end. But she's not only struggling with wanting to feel unique amongst the foursome, but she also has a dark secret that you've layered in to her, and by how she treats Saucy, it affects how she deals with this thing she's done. And without giving away the ending, can you talk about how you came up with that whole idea of what one does with the thought of trust, and trusting another person, someone else trusting you?
So I think part of it was just, I originally called the character Jennifer, because I had a friend in 6th grade who just an incredibly lovely human being. And I think 6th to 7th grade, the girls kind of got, and the boys, I'm sure too, like, you want to be cool, right? And I was never mean to Jennifer, but I kind of just didn't want to be friends with her anymore. And I always remembered that, because I saw her quite a few times much later, and she's, as she was then, an incredibly lovely person. And today I would give anything to have been friends with her all those years, because she's so wonderful. And so I've always felt that so acutely, and how I really don't understand. Like, my son sometimes will say, yeah, I want to be cool. And, when you get older, it's the last thing on your mind. Like, you literally never think to yourself, I want to be cool. And so, but it's such a big part of when you're growing up. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about that. And, yes, trust is just what happens in the book is she's, well, you know what, that would be giving away the ending, so never mind.
Well, I guess we could say that animals are very trusting. If you're taking good care of an animal, they come to trust you very, very much and depend on you. And as I was first evaluating the manuscript, I was thinking a lot about that, about how in order for Becca to redeem herself, she has to realize that she's capable of being someone who can be trusted, because she had betrayed a trust. And I thought that was a really unique way to circle around to something that, like you with your old friend Jennifer, that's been simmering and poking holes at you. And how do you fix that? How can you get brave enough to fix that? And the way you chose to do that within the novel, I thought was really lovely, because it was never heavy-handed and it was never messagey. And there's so many hijinks and mischievous behavior, and Saucy just is causing bedlam in that house. That when you're going into the more nuanced areas about Becca and her, what she's done to this friend of hers, you never feel that Becca's being scolded or being judged. You just let it evolve around the story with the pig. I thought that was just really beautifully done. And I love also that it gives kids who are feeling that way, and a lot of kids do, they've done something, they don't know how to make it better, and it's eating away at them. It helps, I see it as an opening for them to think, oh, I really could go and try and fix this. I really could go talk to that person. They might be really happy for them to say, gosh, I'm really sorry, that sort of thing.
The idea of redemption is really important to me. I remember reading a while ago that for prisoners, sometimes even murderers, or, and they're in jail for a long time, and they actually work with dogs. So they have dogs maybe that are a little too wild to be adopted yet, and they will have prisoners take care of the dogs and really bond with the dogs. And it's transformational, obviously, for the dogs, but for the prisoners as well. And but so it's just so, I really think you can find redemption through animals. And I think the idea of redemption is really important to me. Like, I was thinking of this last night and I thought, well, Caitlyn has probably never gone through this because she's so nice and she's probably never done anything mean. But I think for me, like, I gave an interview the other day with School Library Journal, and I talked about the idea of redemption in this book. And I just was talking about how when Robert F. Kennedy died, and I think I was maybe 11 at that time, and I just lay on the floor sobbing all night, even though I really didn't know much about politics. And much later, I read a review in the New Yorker of a biography of Robert F. Kennedy. And the reviewer said, yes, he was a deeply flawed man, but he embodied in himself and created in others a transcendent yearning for redemption. And I think that was the level at which I connected with Robert Kennedy way back then. And so to me, just thinking of those prisoners and kind of just, redeeming their lives through working with these animals to give the animals better lives, I just wanted Becca to have that feeling. And I feel like I've gone through that myself. I had my first rescue dog, her name was Sarah, and she was crazy when I got her. She would jump up and she would nip at my forehead, and there'd be little dots of blood on my forehead. And I was really terrified of her. I thought she was going to kill me. And when you adopt a dog, you fill out the application and it asks you, how long are you willing to give this dog to fit into your household? And someone told me that most people put something like 2 weeks. And of course, I put 1.5 years. And I said, you know what? I'm going to stick to what I said. I am going to give this dog 1.5 years. And it actually took a few months before we really bonded. But when that dog died, I just about had a nervous breakdown. I was so sad. So I really feel like that dog, in a lot of ways, she taught me how to just love unconditionally. And I think animals teach you, because they're so non-judgmental, and they just somehow teach you how to interact with the people in your lives, right? Just in this more open and accepting and loving way. So
you've always had a penchant for the rescues. How many rescue dogs have you had at this point, Cynthia?
Well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, like, so 5 or 6. And, we keep them until they get old. And then, you sob when they pass away. I think with Sarah, because she was so difficult, it was incredibly heartbreaking when she died. I mean, it was incredibly heartbreaking. I actually went around the house and I took her bedding and all these little things that were hers, and I put them in boxes to save them. And I just, it's when you bring them home and they don't like you yet, it's very chaotic, and they do some crazy stuff. Like, we had this dog Thunder, and we brought him home, and he was completely insane. And he jumped up on a table and started eating this chocolate cake. And of course, chocolate is bad for dogs. And he was throwing up all over, and then he got stuck between the garage and the fence and had to walk forward into our neighbor's backyard. And he broke a mirror. We had some nuts that were in shells, and he ate all of them, and came out the other end in the shells. And he was insane. And by the end, he was just the most, my son always says he had so much soul. He was a very soulful dog. And so there's something about the arc of when you get a rescue animal, and I think this would be with pigs as well, that it's completely chaotic when you get them, and then by the end your relationship is just intensely close. So I love, it's just a joyous feeling, I think, for the animal and for the person.
It's almost as though it takes that much longer to earn their trust.
Yeah.
And once you do, it creates a bond that you couldn't have even imagined before you brought the animal home.
Yeah.
Yeah. You often bring in so many details into a manuscript, and you bring so much into a manuscript that in the editing process, part of what I sometimes have to do is clear things away because you have so many ideas, and not all of them can flourish if they're all, shimmering against each other. And so part of my role sometimes is to say, do we really need this thread? Do we really need that thread? What is it like to get an editorial letter after you've been working for 8 months or a year, or sometimes even 2 years in some of your manuscripts, like the thing about Locke, which was at least 2 years. What is that like? You put so much work in and then you get the letter.
So Caitlyn writes really long letters sometimes. I've heard that others write longer ones. In fact, a colleague of yours once said she wrote a 22-page editorial letter. So I've never gotten a 22-page. I may have gotten 14 at the most, but usually probably about 11. And it's incredibly disheartening. You feel like you've put in all this work, and you get this letter, and usually, sometimes I turn in a manuscript and I know it's not really there, but other times I turn it in and I think, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing I've ever written. And you get the manuscript back, and Caitlyn uses green pen. I think you might use different colored pen on different authors, I'm not sure, but anyway, with her, she uses green. With me, she uses green pen. So she'll just slash through in an entire page. And maybe it's a page where I thought, wow, this is so amazing. And so it is incredibly disheartening. And she's very, like when I was growing up, my family thought I was stubborn. And Caitlyn is so stubborn. And so, at first when she says something, sometimes I feel extremely resistant. And then a year or two later, when she's still sticking with it, she's more stubborn than me ultimately. So I just think, oh, well, I got to cut this out. I'll just delete this because she's never going to give it up. So I think a lot of times she just out-stubborns me. But so, yeah, we were going to ask, I wanted to ask you how that feels, because you know that your authors are, sometimes they get angry with you, and maybe they all get angry with you. I get very angry with you, and you're very calm, and you're such a nice person. And so no matter how angry someone gets at you, I don't remember you ever getting angry back at me. Like, you're just so calm. And so, but I was wondering, what does it feel like for you? Because you're the one who has to kind of break the heart of these people who you work with so closely.
You're the first person who's ever actually asked me that, and thank you, because it's very upsetting for me to have to press send or print out that editorial letter and send it out, because I know that most of the time I'm really upsetting someone. But I also know that my authors, you always trust me to finance writing. I wouldn't be worthy of you if I didn't come at it with everything I had and pointed out everything I thought could be reworked or might not be necessary. I'll offer suggestions on how to fix something, not because I want you to fix it like that. You could say, Caitlyn, that's the stupidest idea I have ever heard. I would do this instead. All I want is for you to get to, I would do this instead. To get you to have in your head how you would fix the problem. Sometimes you think, oh, that's a great suggestion, Caitlyn. Far more times I know you're going, why would she suggest that? But part of it's just to prompt you to get to your even better idea than what you had on the page in the first place. But it's really upsetting. I just sent out an editorial letter to an author, and I reread that letter 4 times before I pressed send, because I knew how much was needed in the next draft, and I knew that author was just going to want to throw darts at a picture of my head. So, and when I tend to see patterns with different authors in what they need, what they often need more work on. Different authors have different soft spots that need a little bolstering. What would you say yours are generally, if you look at, the breadth of the 13 novels written? What do you find yourself having to struggle with the most?
I think, like, just as kind of a metaphor, I was thinking about driving. And I am not a great driver. I mean, physically I can, drive and everything, but I have trouble getting into just the flow. Like, I noticed that other people, they're not even thinking when they're driving. They're just kind of driving because they're totally in the flow. And I'm never in the flow. Like, I'm not going to sit there talking to a passenger when I'm driving, because I'm actually thinking about driving, which nobody else has to do. And there was only one time in my whole life where I was driving and I needed to change lanes, and it was very crowded. And I just suddenly, this one time in my life, I felt the complete flow of the traffic, and I just merged in. Like, usually I just stop and I wait there for 3 minutes until there's no traffic. And this time I was just in the flow. And I think when I'm writing, it's like I have to almost get into the flow of where the book is. And you always want to lie to yourself and say, yeah, I'm in the flow, I'm in the flow. But really you're not. And when you are, you 100% know it. And if you have doubts, that means you're probably not there. That's the way it is for me. So I think I tend to send you manuscripts sometimes where, you'll say, I wish you would reread this before you sent it in. And actually I do reread them before I send them in. What an insult. But so anyway, I feel like my biggest thing, like, you might notice more technically what I'm doing wrong, but my biggest thing is I lie to myself too much. And so I will send in a manuscript where I just haven't found the flow of where the book is. And I'm telling myself, yes, I have. And then I send it to you, and you're probably thinking, why did she send me this? She hasn't even reread the manuscript. I am finding Caitlyn frozen on my end.
I'm frozen.
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you moving around.
I'm frozen.
Oh, there you are.
I'm back. Well, now I have a new buzzword for the margins of your manuscripts. You're not in the flow.
I know, that'll just make my smoke come out of my ears, like literal, actual, physical smoke.
Exactly. So now I'm going to ask some of the audience questions, because there's several here, and let's see. Here's a great one. Hi, Cynthia. What message do you hope kids will take away about this book, especially about animal welfare?
I really would like the kids just, I don't want to tell them what to think or tell them what to do, but I think if they would just have an awareness of how incredibly emotional pigs are, and incredibly intelligent, and to understand that a lot of these pigs are living horrific lives. Like we kept the novel cheerful just because we didn't, it's a younger audience, and we didn't want to, especially in a year like this, I just didn't want, I wanted it to be an upbeat and ultimately optimistic novel. So I wanted to be an optimistic novel about how you can make meaningful change in the world, even if you're just saving one pig. If you're saving 1,000 pigs, if you're saving one pig, it doesn't matter. It's just, you can live a life that has a lot of meaning. And so, like, I think with all my books, I want them to be about a kid who encounters all these problems and maybe does some things that are wrong, but they understand by the end that there is a path forward for them to find meaning in their lives. And so I want them to know that one of the paths that you can find meaning in your lives through is just by working with animals, and even saving the life of one animal.
My internet is unstable. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. Another question is, in a book like Saucy, do you spend equal amounts of time and effort on developing characters and building the plot? Because both seem to be equally important to this novel.
Yes, I would say I kind of cycle through everything. So maybe I'm very focused on one area at a time. And I think part of working with your editor is, I actually think Caitlyn is better than I am at seeing the whole. Like, I went to an accountant once, and the accountant said she can see every number in your, in your tax forms almost all at the same time. And so I think Caitlyn can just she just has this ability to see almost every word in your novel at the same time. And so I'm more, I do have moments like that, but a lot of it is I'm very focused on, plot at one point, character at one point, and so on. And Caitlyn seems like, to me, she's more able to see every word in the novel at the same time. Does that make sense? Is that?
I think it does. You're focusing on each piece almost not quite separately, but as you're building your novel, you're building each piece at a time, whereas I have the liberty of seeing it already built. And so I am able to see it all because you've created it all for me. Whereas while you're creating, you can only create one aspect at a time as you're writing each sentence. And as the novel develops, you're adjusting and shifting how your characters are. And sometimes your character, you'll find you have to go back after the end of the book to change a character in the beginning because of what the kind of quirks you might have given them that you hadn't thought of until 3/4 of the way through. Whereas I have it easier because you've already laid that all out for me. In fact, this leads to another editing question. This one is actually for me. As an editor, were you always harsh? Look what you've done, Cynthia. Now they think I'm harsh. Or did it take you time to develop the relationship with each other? I think I'll clarify what harsh is. And by harsh, my letters, I think Cynthia will agree, are gentle, but very in-depth. And I won't fail to point out anything I think needs fixing. But my way of presenting this is usually quite gentle. But I don't take the time to develop a relationship simply because if I waited to the second or third book to be able to tell an author everything they needed to do to bring everything to their finest level of writing, which is usually the finest piece in the book. You say the finest paragraph in the book is the level of writing the whole rest of the book can be at. Let's go there. Or you have 3 characters who are just brilliant and one who's just a little meh. You want that 4th character to be just as my word of the day is clearly shimmering, but shimmering off the page in the same way. Every author deserves that for every book. what I do find over time working with authors is some like different ways of receiving critique. There are a few who like bullet points. They don't want head pats. They don't want to be told what's wonderful. They just want to know what the issues are. Get it down on the paper. Just let me know that. Most authors don't like that. In fact, can I share this funny story, Cynthia?
I don't know what it is, but go ahead.
There was one time where Cynthia was waiting for an editorial letter from me, and her manuscript had come after two others that were actually being published before hers. So she had to wait a while before I could get back to her. But she was raring to keep writing, which I actually utterly understand. However, I had to do these others first. So Cynthia asked, well, did you read the manuscript? And I said, well, of course I did, but I have to think a lot about the editorial letter. That takes a lot of time to craft it the way that I like to craft it so that it is helpful and not a hindrance. And you finally said, just give me the bullet points. You said once you gave someone just bullet points. I said, you're gonna hate bullet points. And you said, no, just give me the bullet points. I just wanna start working. And we were arguing back and forth about whether you really wanted bullet points and me thinking you don't want bullet points. And finally, I gave up. You were the stubborn one. I sent you the bullet points and you got the bullet points and you called me and you shrieked, don't ever send me bullet points again. It's awful.
Okay, so I have no memory of this, but I just wanted to take issue with her word gentle. Like her letters are actually quite brutal. I would never say gentle, but what I would say is that they're filled with goodwill. Like everything about Caitlyn as a person is filled with goodwill, including her editorial letters. So they're brutal, but I would say they're filled with goodwill, but I would never say they're gentle because they're not really gentle.
They're not mean.
No, they're not mean. They're coming from just they're almost exuding goodness in a sense, right? It's all about making the novel as good as it can be. So they're not gentle at all.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Funny. Cynthia, what was your favorite animal? Shifting gears completely. What was your favorite animal book growing up?
My favorite animal book growing up was probably the Call of the Wild. I loved that book a lot. And another book I liked a lot was, and it wasn't really an animal book in that, and it had an animal in it, but I don't remember it really capturing, the dino-ness of, and I wrote about this recently, of the dinosaur, but I remember reading these books, The Shy Stegosaurus of Cricket Creek. And I wrote about this recently. I'm not even sure I should mention this, but my parents were going through an absolutely fierce divorce. And so these books meant so much to me because I just, it was just at a particular time in my life and they were very comforting books. And so I think those books and The Call of the Wild are the animal books that I most remember from when I was growing up.
And when your son was younger, now this is me being curious, what did he prefer animal books as well?
He liked, in terms of, well, to be honest, he liked the Wimpy Kid books probably best of every book. He used to like my book Cracker. He read that. He might have read that 3 times or something. That's probably the only one of my books that he's actually read. He plays hockey, and so he read part of Checked, and then I don't remember what he said about it. It might have just been, "Mom, this is embarrassing."
Well, I think that covers the questions. Can you think of anything you had wanted to add to this, Cynthia?
No, not off the top of my mind. But yeah. Did the word harsh come from a question, or was that you that used that word? Okay, from a question.
Good question. Yeah.
I use that word sometimes too when I talk about the letters, but it's harsh. It's rigorous. Let's just say it's extremely rigorous. And when I'm feeling hurt or upset, then I think it's the word harsh to myself. But when I'm right now, when she's not editing something for me, I think of the word rigorous.
So there's stages. It's
Yeah.
like stages of the grief of working with Caitlyn. Here's the last
the grief
question.
and joy of working with Caitlyn.
Here's the last question. Good one. What are you working on now, if you're comfortable saying?
Well, there's two things that I'm working on now. One I don't want to say, and then the other is a second Saucy book. And there's a woman who wrote, I asked her some questions and she wrote some really in-depth answers about her relationship with her pig, and just really beautiful things about the depth of the relationship that you can have with these very intelligent animals, just as you can have an incredibly deep relationship with, a dog, or an elephant even. I know I read sometimes about, or see little videos about people who work with elephants, and just the incredible love they have for these animals. It's amazing. So I just wanted to get more deeply, I think, into just the connection between people and animals.
It's great having a chance to talk to you, Cynthia.
I haven't seen you in forever.
Thanks to both of you. Thank you so much. If you don't mind, I think I just wanted to ask both of you one more question, if you want to answer it. But you did talk about some of the books that brought you comfort when you were a kid, some of the animal books. Is there anything that you've been reading lately that you are finding is bringing you a lot of joy or comfort, or just something that you'd want to share with other people?
I did read the manuscript for a Holly, I suddenly forgot, Holly Sloan. And it's about an elephant, actually. And that book had tears rolling down my face at the end. So that was just, for me, the perfect book to read at the time that I read it.
Yeah, nice. Caitlyn, how about you?
That's a hard one, because I've just read two books and I'm not going to name them because it wouldn't be fair, because they both made me really mad.
That happens too.
And so I was not comforted and I was left mad. And so I'm on the hunt for my next read. I tend to read at night adult novels, because then I'm not editing in my head, but it's crossing over, because I got so mad at the last two adult novels I was reading, because I did not like the endings. And so I don't know. Cynthia, hurry up and write the next Saucy.
Perfect segue. Yes, thank you. Books bring out all kinds of emotions. But thank you both for being here so much. Thanks so much to the audience for their great questions. We're going to put a little link in the chat box again so that you can get your own copy of Saucy. And we will add a little information about following Politics and Prose on our social media. But again, thank you both so much for being here. And thanks to everyone for being here. And we hope that you keep reading and expanding your world, and stay safe out there, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
Pleasure.
Thank you for everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Caitlyn.
Bye.